Musically speaking, we're back, and we have a real hot stepper online with us today. Wayne Chen is in studio. You know him. Yes, scholar. He's an author, public intellectual, lawyer, businessman, you name it. He wears so many hats. And I have his good friend, our good friend, Wayne,
yes, man, Maxine.
online. Yes, the great Maxine Stowe. You know, she has been at the heart of the music. She has done so many things. And, you know, she's not one to really be shy about her opinions about issues. So, you know, she's a real stepper. Maxine Stowe, welcome to Musically Speaking. The great Stowe. Maxine, where are you?
Well, I'm here in New York.
Wayne, see you.
No, man, the last time I saw Maxine, she was sitting in my living room in Mandeville.
See your big friend, your big friend
A couple
Maxine.
weeks ago.
Yeah, just had a while ago before you jump on the airplane.
Yeah.
Maxine
Exactly.
Stowe, you have been involved in so many different aspects of the music. Your pedigree is musical. You are the niece of the great Sir Coxsone Dodd, widow of the great Sugar Minot. But that in itself is separate because you have been at the forefront in terms of the promotion of Jamaican music as a label executive. You have worked with, I mean, every label that has been involved with the promotion of Jamaican music, from Columbia Records to VP Records, you name it. I mean, so many. I mean, Ghetto Youths, and you could say so many things. Maxine has been at the heart and the center of the music, and as a woman in the business, she has been a warrior. Welcome again, Maxine. Now, there are a number of questions that we definitely would have for you with regards to just your involvement with the music industry. And we're going to start from your uncle, Clement Dodd. Just give us a brief and just how you got started in the music business.
Well, you know, I actually went to school in terms of my college studies. I studied political science, and I thought that I would be a lawyer or even politician.
But you're still very political.
But of the rebel kind. But you know, my life story is such that actually it was Ras Daniel Hartman, the acclaimed
artist.
Rastafari artist, that introduced me to two people. He introduced me to my uncle, Clement Dodd, and he also introduced me to Bunny Wailer, who became significant in this latest, you know, part of my journey. But I understood Mr. Dodd to be my uncle over the years. I never met him, but I always heard about him through my mom and through my, you know, my extended family and my grandfather. But I never got the opportunity to meet him until Ras Daniel Hartman carried me to him while he was trading his world famous prints. You know, it was the music distributors that bought a significant amount of his drawings and distributed it, you know, as merchandise. And so when Ras Daniel, you know, carried me to him and we started to exchange that we act, you know, who we are, he was very, you know, obviously impressed by me and me by him. And from that stage, we just kept a linkage that when I returned to New York, he bonded with me for me to set up what became Coxsone's Music City in Brooklyn, which became his base actually for over 20, almost 30 years here in New York. Interestingly, that ties me to the history of VP Records because Randy's also left at the same time. So once this opportunity came for me with my uncle to establish his platform here, his distribution and his company, that was the same time VP Randy's also came in that same period and established VP Records. And Christian and I would often meet at the airport, JFK, as we both got the records, cleared. Him from Randy's and me from Mr. Dodd, and we built our relationship that is still continuing to this day there. So,
who were some of the artists that Mr. Dodd was carrying at the time while you were there in New York at that stage?
Well, actually, Sugar Minott was the last artist, and that explains our relationship somewhat. Sugar was the last, I think, artist that Mr. Dodd actually, or one of the last that Mr. Dodd actually invested in and, signed. And as you know, that combination is also the beginning of what is understood as a dancehall genre because of how they came together based really on Mr. Dodd's rhythms that Sugar was a master of because, he was a sound system selector and DJ before he became an artist. But that coming together of Mr. Dodd and Sugar also is known, Live Loving, Sugar's first album, is known as the first dancehall album.
That's an important point to make because many persons conflate dancehall with DJing, and they don't realize that there is dancehall singing, and Sugar Minott epitomize that. Get them in a dancehall style. That is the heart of the dance hall because a lot of people also mistakenly attribute what came before the DJing and they sometimes call it dance hall when in point of fact it wasn't dance hall, it was just DJing, strictly DJing and not dance hall. And Sugar was the exponent of dance hall singing, the kind of thing that Frankie Paul, the kind of thing that Little John, those type of artists really demonstrated, and that's very important, Maxine. Dance hall. Yes, you want to
I want to tell you, Maxine. I don't know if I've shared this anecdote with you, and it comes back to us being here in Jamaica and rooted in Jamaica that we tend not to see the things developing. It's only when we step back from the picture and see what is happening. In the summer of 1985, I was visiting Oxford University for the first time. Just went up on a visit because, you're a kid here in Jamaica. Man, you have to go to the great Oxford.
Yes, hear about Oxford, yes.
The thing that struck me, I went in, going college to college, and I go into a college. And there's a massive Sugar Minott poster in Oxford University. And I had to put my hand on my head and say, rotted. Maybe I wasn't paying sufficient attention. I mean, I have all the Sugar records and so on, but you're in it and the thing is developing around you and you don't realize that
the impact.
It has, somebody elsewhere has recognized that something new is happening.
Sugar Minott.
Yes, and it was happening because
Maxine.
we were going through the death of Bob Marley, right? And what he represented in 1981. Because if you look at the genre, I think Sugar's album may have been 1979, around that time. And we were going through a lot of the same thing that we would talk about in the 90s and what Wayne, alluded to earlier about the rise, the ebb and the flow of our success in the international industry. But at that time, all of our major artists were signed at that time. Gregory, Dennis, all of them were signed and going through various crossover type productions or trying to make it consistently
onto mainstream radio, and that's
onto mainstream radio,
that,
etc. Which is
that's one of the things I want to talk to you about, Maxine, because you were at the heart of that, and you saw
in the 90s.
In the 90s, yes, not in the 80s.
But it has been happening before.
It happened before, and it failed. Failed to some extent, and it happened again in the 90s when everybody and their dog was signed to one of these labels. You were at Columbia, at the center of things, and then everything collapsed. We want to get a sense of what really took place and why the demise of the music at that time.
Well, I think, I hearken back to even, Bob Marley and the Wailers, the Wailers, really, and their soiree with Johnny Nash and Danny Sims. And we need to study the structural reasons why we have to do these things or merge our music to understand that it's not negative in terms of words that we attribute, like collapse or, we're doing something wrong or, like that. But really look at that we are a nation that doesn't have a marketplace that is large enough to support us. And because we don't have that market, we have to now depend on the international, which is our diaspora markets. These are not foreign markets. These are markets where we as Jamaicans are living in sufficient numbers and in sufficient ways that we are impacting the larger market. And we have not studied that enough to create a business model. There's an informal business model, as Wayne has expressed earlier. But we need to study ourselves and do it in a way that we're not attributing negatives, you understand, or failure or whatever, but challenges in relation to our size. That is it. It's the same thing happening to us right now with the ganja industry. That we are known globally for ganja, etc., but we cannot engage it because of structural issues here at home, that a lot of them that we cannot change in and of ourselves without international partnerships. Every product that we produce as Jamaica, banana, tourism, whatever it is, the product, it is based on international ventures. What we need to be doing is having these ventures benefit us more based on, negotiated principles in terms of the raw product or, how we get better at it. So that's where I would, say what my experience teaches me, that's where we need to focus on and stop talking about who failed what or who did what.
So we didn't fail, but lessons learned. And you seem to have quite a sense of what perhaps we can do better as we go forward now. Part of the challenge was definitely the question of access to airplay. And I think the difficulty was that in many instances, as you pointed out, the collaborations were perhaps predicated on the need to be able to get access to these stations, which would not play our music in the regular or natural form that they occur. Is that something that you would agree with?
Yes, definitely. We are a foreign music to foreign countries, and each country has their, we're quarreling in Jamaica that we too much foreign music on our station. You know what I mean? And there's quotas, meaning there's a reality to us as outside product. You understand? Becoming a staple. You know, you'll have breakthrough things like, oh, you have something viral, etc. But structurally, there will be issues in relation to how many of us as Jamaicans will be able to enter and or dominate a chart in another country. You know what I mean? No matter how good we are, etc., etc. So what we need to appreciate and what has happened is companies like VP Records and companies like Island Records that we have to realize how they have grown and expanded and developed in these international markets.
Would you
To
say that
study,
would you
huh?
say that they have been better at promoting Jamaican music, the island for reggae and the VP for dancehall, than say an outfit like Columbia, which is a major label that you're associated with?
Yes, we had at Columbia, we had to work with VP. You understand? Because VP control
The
the
streets.
Jamaican base and the streets, and because they're a Jamaican company that is like what I've said, you know, being active in Jamaica, that our business is offshore, our companies are offshore. What is happening is that VP and Coxon, etc., the terms in which they left Jamaica is what we need to understand, that it was hostile. You understand? They didn't grow like Grace Kennedy or, you know, Red Stripe, where they were stationed in Jamaica and set up these international subsidiaries to the Jamaican company. Something happened in Jamaica that caused them to leave Jamaica. You understand? Without, you know, Coxon Studio
On
One in
not too
Jamaica,
favorable circumstances. Under
right?
not
Because their companies in Jamaica were shut down. And then the nexus of the company was offshore in New York for both Coxon and VP. And to a certain extent, Island made the decision in 1962 when they set up Island in England to operate offshore. There was no island in Jamaica. There was only island in England. Years later, there was apparently an island Jamaica as part of that. It didn't actually work. But those are the things that I would love for us to, you know, talk about, you know, structurally, and see how to get past. You know, I'm not interested in converting Jamaican capital who have never made any money or is not benefiting from the industry to invest in the industry in Jamaica. I'm interested in the international companies and the international Jamaican companies to have a discussion about how, based on the history, we can get the economy that we have created and the extensive lifestyle companies that are plugged in. How can we get them linked more efficiently into Jamaica to help us this way? As Wayne said, we don't need to look to the Jamaican government other than to facilitate this coming together of international, offshore, and our local
What about
environment.
Jamaican capital, though? Don't you think it might be better to secure investment from indigenous entities rather than from overseas entities? More.
No, but we are indigenous. VP is an indigenous entity. Island is an indigenous entity. Universal, by purchasing Island and having all that catalog, is an indigenous entity. It's like what Wayne was explaining. You understand that these parties will argue that the money is from Jamaica. The most of the money that is coming out into VP and our Island Universal with the catalog that they have, all of the production, etc., occurred in Jamaica. Jamaican money from the streets or from the people or what they brought in back as their royalties or whatever is what created and creates the music. So we need to acknowledge that and start to build from where we are and not go into all of these other areas. The American music industry was invested in by record manufacturers. Well, I mean, not record companies. It was very surprising to me the other day. Not surprising, but educated that it is a record, not record the music, but record, phonograph
pressing plants.
Yeah,
yes.
the pressing plants. They
Not
wanted
the
product.
pressing plants. The people who built radio, Zenith,
Oh,
RCA.
Right. Well, yes.
You understand what I'm saying? Because they are benefiting from the music that you're creating. It's an ecosystem.
Well, remember
Right?
Sony. That's how Sony bought Columbia. eventually.
Columbia and Epic.
Right, and
Right?
Philips and all of these consumer
Electronics.
electronic
Yeah,
companies.
yeah.
They were by because they were making bets on these technologies and therefore saying, well, if we can control the content, then we are able to embed them in these gadgets
Exactly.
and we can make them move. But I mean,
So why are we? So that's what I'm saying. So if we are making content and we are impacting the international market, why aren't we studying these companies? Also now Apple, all of these people who are involved, why aren't we curating them instead of talking about who in Jamaica?
There's one thing, Maxine, you are entirely correct. There's one thing I want to add to what you said. And it's a profound point that I don't think is said often enough, that when Jamaican music has gone international, it has gone through the diaspora. I want to say one more thing. It has gone through the Caribbean diaspora. Because when I travel throughout the Caribbean, I'm surprised and not surprised, just like you, at how our Caribbean neighbors have adopted Jamaican music as their own.
Oh, when we come back, I'm going to talk about that. I mean, what happens in Trinidad and Barbados and the rest of the Caribbean with our
Absolutely.
music. When we come back, musically speaking, Liner King, Shy Guy, Maxine Stowe, you know a lot about this song. Tell us a little bit about it. Shy Guy and your days at Columbia.
Yeah, I was just listening to it a while ago and with a lot of regret.
Yeah, let me hear the story now.
The regret is Rihanna, because that Diana was our Rihanna. And when I think about the trajectory that we had and the potential and the rejection, that you discussed earlier, when our artists may attempt to, broaden their spectrum in terms of music, because we got so specific about who
Expectation,
we are.
yes.
Expectations, and we don't recognize that we are, our own music is a amalgamation of
Different
very
sounds.
much, especially American music. It is embedded in us. And if we get expert, if we are able to develop, we have, like you said, talent abound. So if there's one that pops up that can traverse, you understand, and cross over, they should not be rejected, nor the process, found to be negative. Because look at Rihanna and look at the multi-billion dollar industry that she has been able to project, when we had artists of similar ilk, but they were rejected at home by, and I don't even know if it's the people as much as the gatekeepers or certain people in our industry who, feel certain way or don't understand our ignorance or whatever that is. So, but Shy Guy, as you notice, Diana was actually a background singer for Shabba Ranks. That's and I had gotten her tape from someone else, but I had I don't remember who it was. Someone from City Heat band or
City Heat.
how I
City Heat,
got
yes.
the tape.
She was a North
North
Coast
Coast
singer.
The first time I saw her was on
North
North
Coast
Say in the
Coast,
hotel.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, and I was enthused about her and presented, because I saw, remember Diana came up the same time with Mariah Carey. There was another girl out of Guyana that was, crossing over, and I saw the potential for that outside of, dance hall, that I was Supercat, that I had signed Cobra, etc. And that's something else that I got from my uncle, Clement Dodd, when you asked about Clement Dodd. Clement Dodd's impact on me as the Jamaica Recording, Publishing and Studio Limited. He had every type of music in his catalog. He had gospel, he had jazz, he had, so my understanding of Jamaican music is that we can create a whole spectrum of music, and we have the ability to. And at any time, we should have been able, as a record company, to do whatever we want at whatever time. You understand? But it's the politics of Jamaica, as Wayne has alluded to several times. There's a lot of things happening there that I'm also involved with on another level.
Oh, yeah.
of breaking the ceiling, the glass ceiling.
One second. I don't want to stop you from breaking the ceiling there, Max. But 1 second. I'm going to go to racing at Caymanas Park. Hold your thoughts there, and we're going to come right back. Musically speaking, that's the program. I have in studio Wayne Chen, scholar, lawyer, businessman, author, so many things. And we have online in New York, chilling out, Maxine Stowe, who has been at the center of modern Jamaican music, playing so many different roles in so many different places. But I want to talk a little bit more about the Columbia experience, Maxine, because here it was a major label trying to get its hands around Jamaican music. You said that you don't consider the efforts at these labels a failure. You think it's a learning experience. What was some of the things you learned there at Columbia as far as Jamaican music is concerned and how it should be marketed? I mean, clearly she must have had some serious insights there with.
Before Maxine jumps in, I will say this. Maybe Maxine can say it for herself. But certainly, Supercat continues to resonate. Certainly, the Reggae Espanol album, which was the first of its kind, bringing the
reggaeton.
Reggae in Espanol,
reggaeton,
Panama, which you can to Puerto Rico eventually.
Puerto Rico, Nando Boom, El General, bringing it to a different market, and certainly reggaeton was almost inevitable. And I have witnesses who will say that I said it 30 years ago when Reggae Espanol came out. I said, if Jamaicans were to start recording in Spanish, the Latin American market was just unnatural for us to launch on.
Penetrate.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And a couple of Jamaican artists have done it. I mean, when Sean Paul, in the nascent part of his career, Sean Paul sang in Spanish or DJed in Spanish and reached an audience very, very quickly. People don't even understand. I know Mr. Vegas and others also were able to go there. And you have other dancehall artists who have managed to bridge into the Spanish market. But it could have been so much bigger. But we learn, as Maxine says.
Yes, I was about to say my Columbia experience was built on Reggae Espanol. And it was the interest in Reggae Espanol, what was happening with El General, that opened the door concurrently, because El General also came out of the Brooklyn experience, where Shabba, Supercat, you have to recognize that Biggie Smalls, mm-hmm. Heavy D, Busta Rhymes mm-hmm. are also of Jamaican mm-hmm. heritage, mm-hmm. second generation or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that particular period is what brought, as Wayne had spoken about the Caribbean, Panama would have to be mm-hmm. one of the countries that we speak about. Mm-hmm. in
And we have a big,
relation
we have a diaspora in Panama.
Very much so. I mean,
diaspora in all of these
Colon is a
countries.
Jamaican town.
Yes.
To down, right? And so it was on that foundation and being at VP Records where all of this was churning, because I was actually working at VP at the time before going to Colombia, right? So that was my experience at Colombia. It's built on Reggae Espanol. And when I see how, I don't just think about it in terms of the artist singing Spanish. I also think about it in terms of our companies investing in those areas of signing Spanish reggaeton artists as well. You understand what I'm saying? That is not just on the artist, but you as a company is also attractive to a reggaeton, artist that wants to sign. They come here and operate in our studios. They want the essence of our productions and our producers. So we could just as much, if we had the framework to sign and develop that department, we could have done so as well. You know what I mean?
I want to add a little context to what we are discussing. If you were to look at the 10 biggest songs in the world last year, chances are 3 or 4 of them are going to be reggaeton. Reggaeton is a massive global genre. The second thing I'll add is if you were to look at the most successful reggae bands in the world today, and I'm talking about traditional Jamaican reggae, one of them is going to be Dread Marai out of Argentina, that you will never hear of outside of Latin America and parts of Europe. But massive, massive. When I say massive, in terms of sales, in terms of concert size and so on. And they play straightforward Jamaican reggae.
Reggae.
But we have not inserted ourselves
sufficiently
in that experience.
Exactly.
From a marketing
because
standpoint.
Jimmy Cliff, remember, Jimmy Cliff is the paving of reggae on that level in Latin America.
Yeah, man. Jimmy Cliff.
Brazil,
you understand what I'm saying?
But also in Argentina. When I landed in BA in Buenos Aires the first time many years ago, the taxi driver, when he realized I was from Jamaica, he sang literally on the way to the hotel, Rebel in Me, pitch perfect.
Exactly.
Just sang
you
it to me.
understand? Before, and that's the other part of our history, which is why we need the museum, as you know.
We've been working on it a long time. No comment.
That's my way of, saying, what do we do? Not just Maxine write a book.
We try to do it on social media every day in terms of build the archive, We build the virtual archive, Maxine.
But Maxine is writing a book.
Yeah, I'm writing a book.
Of
I am
course.
a book. I mean, I'm a walking book.
Walking experience.
No, because because it's important that these stories are codified, because you can't just have them just drifting in the ether like that. I mean, there is value to stories like the Maxine Stowe story.
Yeah, of course, and and also the recognition that it's not a binary. It's not success and failure. It's every single experience that we have builds the foundation. Once we are willing to learn from it, and also
Bridge 99 FM is a diaspora business that has come back to invest in, as I understand it. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
So I, as you're talking to me, I'm seeing the future as it is unfolding. You understand what I'm saying? So musically, it's the same thing. It's going to have to happen. It will be happening. We are pioneers of it happening. And I think it's sharpening because governmentally and politically, they're investing and they're wooing the diaspora. We just need, on the music and culture side, to be a little bit more,
And I think
facts, not anecdotes and things like that.
Well, and as you speak of that, because one of the critical parts of what we have in terms of the music is the resolution of some of the issues, because in terms of ownership, in terms of rights, I know you're a big
No intellectual property rights.
No, I know. Well, Maxine is very big on who
We know
did
this.
what and why, which,
But I want to add one more thing. The IP is very, very important. But the leveraging of the brands now is becoming. Well, it has long been. I mean, you don't wear Bob Marley shoes by accident or have Bob Marley headphones. And Bob Marley as a global brand has shown what we can do, the potential of Jamaican brands. And I use it in that narrow term. I know we have local issues to work out, but I'll give you one quick story. 20 years ago, I'm in New Orleans, and I walk into a store, and it has, what in quotation marks, vintage T-shirts. Not really vintage, but and one of the T-shirts was a Jamaican dancehall poster from the 1980s with tenor saw right across it. And I'm saying, somebody's going to buy this at an escalated price. And I don't think we really appreciate how tenor saw, who probably produced a dozen songs in his life, how tenor saw was resonating still 20 years later.
It was iconic.
Absolutely. How the fact
and that's why, even as you segue from Bob Marley, as you know, I worked closely with Bunny Wailer for the last 10, 11 years. And one of my major projects now is Whalers 50, and leveraging the Whalers brand as Bunny, Peter, and Bob. You know what I mean? Which has not, in all of these 50 years, I was surprised, even though, not surprised in the last 10 years, but when I acknowledged that Burning album was released on Peter's birthday, October 19th, 1973, and I'd never been linked, you understand, to Peter in 49 years. Similar Catch a Fire was released April 13th, 3 days after Bunny's birthday, because birthdays are big in terms of how we talk about our artists. And so I'm looking for 50 years. The Catch a Fire and Burning album, which are masterpieces in terms of the history of Jamaican music, has never been linked to either Peter or Bunny. You understand? Only Bob Marley.
Maxine, I know you'll get irony, but I'll tell you a quick story. I saw Get Up, Stand Up, the Bob Marley, and I put in the subtext, a Bob Marley musical in London a few weeks ago. And I don't think anybody saw the irony that the fact that Get Up, Stand Up was written by Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, and Bunny Wailer. The song.
Yeah, and performed by them. Yeah.
And performed by them. Each had a verse in the song. So, Get Up, Stand Up, the Bob Marley musical. As I said, we don't get irony.
No,
even the Bob Marley beach that they're talking about.
It's
Bunny Wailer who lived on the beach.
We know this.
Yeah, Maxine, we could go down this one here, and you and I have gone down this track a number of times, because I think there needs to be an honest appraisal of what has happened with regards to the Whalers. And we need to, that story is a great story on a number of levels, in a number of ways.
It's a poster child. It's actually a poster child for the structures, for what happened.
Because there were many mistakes that were made. There were many mistakes that were made. You would agree.
Not only mistakes. These have to do with structures. These have to do with the fact that Bob had Island Records promoting him. Bunny and Peter had not that equanimity in marketing. You understand what I'm saying? And the unequalness of it in terms of the lack of resources and ability. You see it, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, but some would argue that Bunny and Peter stepped away from that machinery.
It doesn't matter. Their work didn't step away. Their work existed. Their work didn't step away. The work that they didn't step away. The Beatles, when they left, John Lennon and whoever, they went on. Their work didn't step away. You understand what I'm saying? So there's something structurally
it's an opportunity.
wrong.
It's an opportunity, and it's an opportunity.
Well, framing that story the way you have, Maxine, might have some real appeal
No, it's
internationally. I mean, it's something that we need to be talking about and saying, look, let's look at this thing in a very holistic fashion, see what went wrong and what was right. And I mean, as you said, the template, it's a template for...
It's a template to go.
I mean, because
yeah,
there's so
we have
much...
a tribute group. I developed a Whalers Trail tribute group. To see that tribute groups is a whole market and back, you know what I mean?
We were talking about it earlier when I said the Philippines. There are more Filipino Bob Marleys than there are Bob Marley.
Bob Marley.
Maxine, Wayne, we have to step away from this program now. I mean, but we could go on and on because there is so much information flowing from this program. Wow. The great Maxine Stowe, the great Wayne Chen, musically speaking. Want to thank Danelia Doyle for my producer. Want to thank Kevin Williams. Want to thank Tristan Palmer. Want to thank my 9/10ths, Maxine. The other Maxine. You know the other Maxine.
yes.
Yes, you know. A big up to my sister Shireen, you know. It was a wonderful program just going through all of these things and looking at the state of Jamaican music and where we can take it. Thanks so much again, Wayne. And thanks, Maxine. Musically speaking, that's the program.